welcome to All Stars. I'm Sal. That's Josh. Oh, man. We're talking about Batman and Robin. Your Batman and Robin book is launching.
Yeah, finally, we can actually talk
FOC?
about it. Let me tell you something, really. You're the first person to read it.
No shit.
Yeah, you're the first person to read it, like, outside of DC. You're the very first. So
I'm the first civilian to read it.
Yeah, you're the first. I don't like calling people civilians. I feel like we're all comic fans here. We're all big nerds. You know, we all love it. Nobody's a civilian. We're all in the same fight.
Right.
But
I dug it. I will say, honestly, I thought it was awful. It was garbage. And I was like, why do you have a job? No, it's great. I loved it.
Thanks, man.
Obviously, you got to read it to get the character and the words, but the thing that jumps off the page is Simone De Mayo's art, which is just sick. It's so unexpected. I haven't seen a Batman book look like this ever.
Yeah, and it's really like it's very high energy. Like I knew what Chip was going to be doing, and I knew what Rom was doing. So I was like, I have to do something that's different from what they're doing. I have to really approach this from a very different, and I have little rules and stuff. Like I have this whiteboard back here. It's over here.
Yes,
you can't
the whiteboard that we'll never see. Yeah, I know.
I had to turn it around because I was like, wait, that actually has a bunch of it has a whole year's worth of Batman and Robin plans on it. So I was like, I better turn that around so somebody sees it. But I made little notes to myself of what to me are the goals. But yeah, with Simone, he and I, we had talked a bunch over the years, and he did a bunch of covers for Robin. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, this guy's art style is so interesting and engaging, and it really fit what we were going for. We were like, we want this to be that mix of just really high octane, really fast energy and action, and then father and son moments. And if you notice, he actually draws the two scenes differently. Mm-hmm. Like if you really get in there and look, you'll notice that when they're Batman and Robin, he does certain kind of page layouts. When they're Bruce and Damian, he does other kind of layouts. Like he really put a lot of thought into what he was doing with it. But Simone I'm looking at it too while we're talking. It's there's some stuff here that's really, really cool. And one of the things I always love is when the art starts coming in and I get to start cutting lines of dialogue.
Get it out of the way.
With this, I was cutting stuff because I was like, oh, it's all here. I don't need to address any of this. I can just cut, and then just build something that's just a very fun Batman book. And I think his art style really matches the exact tone we were going for, which is really fun. Like a fun, high octane father and son adventure.
It is a perfect blend between Batman, like a Batman book that you'd expect, and the Robin book that you are now famous for. That book is so youthful and fun and genuine, and it really humanizes Damian because, as you may be aware, I'm not the world's biggest Damian fan. And I kind of when
I did not know that until recently, and I was like, oh man, you and I got to talk about this. Well, who's your favorite Robin? Is it Tim? Yeah.
I was born in the 80s, so that's that.
No, I mean, listen, Tim is an entry point for a lot of people into the DCU, including myself. I've talked this a lot where it's when Tim Drake was introduced, was at that time period at DC where a lot of new youthful elements were being introduced. Yeah. And so Tim is very much like a Robin for me. There was something about when Damian was introduced. At first, I definitely had that little bit of energy that everyone else has. Not everyone else, but people sometimes have of oh, he's a little brat, Yeah. But as time went on, I really just started liking it more and more. And then when you read, Grant and Frank Quitely's Batman #1, and you're just like, dude, I was just like, I love this kid. And I got to write him in one of my very first DC jobs. Was for Batman issue. Yeah, Batman Superman. Oh, it was Superman Batman.
Superman Batman back then. Let's put Superman first. That'll sell better.
That book did sell really well though.
It was a good book. That was a good series.
It was very fun. But I got to write an issue with that where it was Damian and Supergirl, and just writing him, I was like, oh, that's right. When I was a little kid, I was a little cocky brat too. So I'm like, oh, I'm going to adopt this child. And from that point forward, I kept trying to write him for 10 years.
Yeah.
10 years. I kept trying to write him, and then they finally gave me a Robin book, and I just knew exactly what to do with them. Mm-hmm. I had his voice in my head automatically. And with this, I want to continue those stories, which is sort of what Bruce is even saying, where Bruce is like, you were growing up on that island, and you were actually able to make friends, and you were having progress as a person, because Damian has had a hard time, And I really don't like when people act like he was a villain or anything like that. I'm like, he is a teenager, dude. He's a kid. And so, when it says that, but it's still a Batman interpretation of it, of like,
Yes.
we're gonna continue that. So you're gonna go to high school, like, and I, I wanted to, and obviously, Damon, what are you talking about? But yeah, I wanted to continue all the stuff I was building off of Robin, and then bring it back into Gotham. So like that to me was like the Lazarus Island arc for Damian, and now we're back into like the father son Gotham stuff.
Yeah. What's your favorite Robin? Is it Damian?
At this point, it's Damian. Yeah, I mean, I like them all. It's always tough.
Oh,
Like
okay. What a cop-out
I will
answer.
tell you
Great.
I will tell you it's challenging, right? Like, so I would say this thing on Flash, right? Like when I was a little kid, obviously Wally was the Flash, and then here comes Bart, and I was just like all about Bart. Same thing with Tim. It was like, I even had hair like Bart when I was a kid. I had this like crazy, like kind of longer, poofier hair,
Nice.
And so I related a lot to Bart, and I was like a hyper kid. It was just like, that is me as a child. So I was a big Impulse kid, and eventually you're an Impulse kid, and then and then when Jeff Johns was on Flash, and I was reading the Flash the whole time. I love what Mark Waid did. I think I told you before, where I remember when Mark Waid left, I was like, no one is going to be able to replace him. This is impossible, And then I started reading Jeff's stuff and really liking it. And then I think Jeff put a lot of work into that character, so I was very much a Wally guy.
Yeah.
And then, but when I got the job on the Flash, it was Barry, and that was definitely a struggle because it was like, I was either a Bart or a Wally person.
Yeah.
And then this other guy. Here I'm writing. What's that?
Now you got this other guy who's got a lot of history that you didn't grow up with, because he'd already been dead by the time we're reading books.
Well, that's what's the thing with him, and it became part of the story to me, was that like the Flash is this character. Barry Allen is a character who has been put on this pedestal because he is a martyr, right? He is the martyr. He is the hero who sacrificed himself to save the multiverse, and everyone looks at him as this like perfect hero all the time, and that was how everyone saw him, including Wally. So when he comes back from the dead, I wanted to explore that of like, oh, here's this person that everyone thinks is this perfect person, and at some point Barry is like, well, I want to become that. And that's why in the first issue, Rebirth issue, those two cops are talking about Barry, and they say everyone thinks Barry is this great person, but I see a person who makes mistakes. And that's why I constantly had Barry making mistakes, because it was this idea that he is not that person, but he wants to be. And that was the thing at the ending, was he wanted to be. Now, the reason I'm telling you all this is that working on Barry Allen, having him in my head for 5 years, I am bonded with him forever. Yeah. Like that is a character I'm bonded with forever, right? Like he will always be. And actually, it's funny, when I was writing him in Dark Crisis, I was sort of like, oh, I actually am detached from him more now. Like I had felt like, oh, the personality break had happened, right? Like we were now two separate people, and he's over here and is no longer in my head the way he was. Yeah. So with Damian, like obviously Tim Drake was my Flash, or Tim Drake was my Robin. Yep. Right. Like I like Jason Todd. I thought Jason Todd coming back in Red Hood was such a good idea. Yep. I always really liked Dick Grayson, but Dick Grayson is Nightwing. Right.
That's right.
He's Nightwing. Right.
He's the template for Robin, but also like he's the one who got to grow up.
Yeah, and actually, somebody could probably correct me on this. I have to do the math in my head, but I'm like, I think he's been Nightwing longer than he was Robin, right? Definitely. Like historically, right? Definitely. Yeah. So, yeah, because he's been Nightwing almost as old as I am.
Yeah, he was Robin from the 40s till the 70s. Oh, I want to say 81.
Oh, till 80. Yeah, so 80. So we're close. We're close.
Yeah, so 40 years.
Yeah, we're close, right? Somebody in the comments can correct us.
Definitely.
They can go look it up. I'm not going to look it up right now.
Doesn't matter.
But so with Damian, like I've written him so much, and I'm very protective of him. I'm very like, what are they gonna do with Damian? Oh, please don't do that. Like, please don't. Like, I remember. I'll just say I have been, even before I was writing Damian, I was protective of Damian. Like I was like, what's happening? Why are we doing that? I'd be in a meeting and be like, why is that gonna happen?
Why are we hurting Damian? Why is the magician? Why is Jim being so mean to the magician?
I liked some of the stuff that was going on with him, but yeah, I just knew, and I think Tomasi obviously does such an amazing work with Damian, and that's a big part of it too. Like you read Super Sons, read Batman and Robin, you read the stuff that they were doing and what Tomasi was doing. And I think Tomasi, I don't want to use the word underrated, because I'm like, Tomasi does amazing work. And if you look at all the stuff he did at DC, like if you want to know, like he's definitely one of those writers that you look at and you're like, you want to know how like the better versions of these characters, how they've been written. You can look at a lot of stuff Tomasi did because he really understood not only the character but the universe around that character.
Totally.
So Superman, Batman, Damian, Green Lanterns, you know. So look at that stuff he did, and it's like you start to really build this picture of who Damian was. So for me, when I was only coming onto it, I just sort of like embraced this kid, and now he's like my kid. So it's like when you're asking me who's my favorite child, I'm like, you mean the baby that I'm holding right now?
Fair enough.
Like, of course he's my little baby man. No, I really like Damian, and I just feel like when I approached him, and I still feel this way, he's a teenager.
Yeah.
Like everyone always writes him as like, not everyone, I should say this again, because again, Tomasi didn't, but I think sometimes the interpretation I see sometimes when people are not digging in is like, oh, he's just a badass little assassin. And it's like, yes, sure, but also a teenager. Like, he's a kid. Like, let's kind of approach it from that. Like, he's also a kid that has been raised very differently. You know, he has a very different life experience. So let's just all factor that in and think about who he is. And then, you know, like I was working on an issue yesterday, and part of this book is about Damian, like thinking he's learned everything and they're needing to learn more. Like, you know, there's a line later on where Batman basically talks about you should never, like Batman and somebody else, I'm not going to say, they basically talk about how, you know, you can never stop learning. Like you can never, you need to, you know, you can never stop learning.
Right.
And that's where Damian, but Batman is the same way. Batman is training. Like Batman trained across the world, but it's not like he stopped. He didn't come back to Gotham and go, I'm done. Like he's still
perfect. Yeah,
but that's how it is with Damian sometimes. And I think, you know, for Damian to kind of learn all this stuff but then also just have some fun with it. And that's the thing with this first issue. Like again, you can see with Simone. Like Simone is just like having a lot of fun with this. And you know, I'm looking at it again now, and it's like I just wanted to have this book that was, I don't know, a fun father and son adventure of two dudes who are like still superheroes that fight crime in Gotham City.
Yeah, no, well, and like I said, like it is a blend of like this. It's got this youthful energy, but now we finally get like it would be kind of reductive to put Batman in the Robin solo book because he'll overshadow him, or he has the danger of doing that. Whereas, you know, you run the risk of in a Batman solo title making Robin center stage. I vividly remember this switch over when DC was very happy with Tim Drake and pushing him because he was very popular, and they were like, and they made, you know, the what's the term for like the box with the numbers and all and the characters in them on the cover?
The corner box. I think we just call it
corner box. But in the corner box, it was Batman, and then one day
Drake.
It was both of them together.
Oh yeah.
No, it was on the Robin books. Tim Drake's by himself, but on the Batman book, it was both of them. And so it was like if you bought that book and you saw both of them on the cover, even if Batman was on the cover, you knew you were going to get at least 25% Robin in that book. And so he kind of like pulled attention away from Batman a little bit. But this is a Batman and Robin title, so it's going to be both characters kind of like informing the other. And you get that from the jump. Like in the book, you get Batman and then you get Damian and Bruce. And it's like the first time I've seen a kind of genuine approach. Not like I mean, obviously, again, Tomasi's done a wonderful job with Super Sons. You get to see him be a dad, but this is a moment where you get to see like a kind of this. If they weren't Batman and Robin, you get to see this kind of father and son dynamic, and I'm like, I'm here for that. Like I'm here to see that.
That's good. I'm glad you saw that. One of the challenges in this book has been that. Like I'm very conscious of that it has to be both their books. Right. Because my impulse sometimes is every once in a while I'm like, this is Robin's book. Like, and I start, you know, and then I'm sitting there writing, and then I'm like, no. And then sometimes I'm like, oh, this is Batman's issue, you know, and it's like, no. Everything has to always be both of them, and there has to be a reason for them both to be there. And so it's like thinking about that, but then also I have little notes of like I always want to see. You know, I don't think I'll get it every issue just because of the nature of comics, but it's like I want to see them without their masks on in every issue together.
Totally.
Right? Like just a moment where they're just the father and son. And it's like, you know, like this week I had a Superman annual that came out, and it's like Lois Lane with the Daily Planet staff. But I made sure that Superman, even though it's very clearly about the Daily Planet, I went to great lengths to be like, this is also Superman, and Superman's presence is felt even in the scenes he's not in. Right. Like I tried really hard to make sure that, no, it's still about Superman.
Right.
there are times where it's like, and this might happen eventually. I might do an annual, or I might do a Batman and Robin issue that is just about Bruce and Damian. Like
Yeah.
it is being father and son for an issue, and but the trick there is that it's still a Batman and Robin comic book, and so
Yeah.
it's like having to make sure that those elements are still in there. Um, yeah, looking at this, yeah, just it's fun watching them as sort of this teenage son with this dad who's not necessarily. It's funny because at this point Bruce is used to having teenagers around. Like
Yeah, this is a
it's
more
not like a new
well-adjusted.
thing. He's like
Yeah.
a teenage kid in the house. Bam, that never happened before. Like that's obviously
Right?
not how Bruce is. You know,
No, but I mean, like,
Damian's
we
still
can
different.
the
But
implication, because you're the one who teased it, so I'll key
yeah,
into that
sure.
as well. The idea of like Damien going to school.
Yeah,
Um, you know, the closest thing we've had is I think Damien went to like a prep school at some point. We rarely got to see the
he's
inside of
gone
that school.
undercover. There's
Yeah,
undercover stories, and he's bounced around it. But I think, but that's actually part of what the story is Bruce. You know, Bruce says it in the issue where he's just like, I did not get to have real teenagers, and so I want you to have them. And Damien is like, that's not what I want.
right, right, right.
And there's a line. The way the book is structured is like the first four issues. It's very similar to how Superman is structured, where it's like the first four issues are a mini arc that kind of sets up like a pilot, right? So it's like Superman, the first three issues were a mini arc that set up a pilot. These first four issues are like a mini arc that set up a pilot. And then then it's like a two-issue arc, two-issue arc, three-issue arc. Then it's like shorter arcs.
Mm-hmm.
But Damien he says to Bruce at one point, he says, like, if you can give me a good reason to go back to school, I will do it. If
Mm-hmm.
you can, this happens later. He's like, if you can give me a good reason, I will do it. And then both Bruce and Damien figure out a reason why he's going back
Sure.
to school, right? So
Yeah.
there is like there's literally a line where Damien is like, oh, okay, I guess there is a reason.
Crap.
Maybe. Like he figures something out, which is like spoilers for the later issues. But
Yeah.
I think by the time we get to issue 4, you'll see all the pieces that we've been doing, and with this issue, I definitely pull a lot of I put a lot of mysteries on the table, like early on. It's like you see what happens to Bruce at the ending, and you see there's sort of hints of like something else is going on in Gotham that they're not totally plugged into yet. And
Right.
we announced this. It wasn't a secret, but we announced it at San Diego. The whole thing was Shush. Did you and I ever talk about Shush? Did we ever talk about this?
We definitely talked about Shush off mic. I don't know about on, but we can talk about Shush a little bit. Yeah, what's the deal with Shush?
So we can talk about this at San Diego, so it's not like, again, it's not a secret.
Yeah, I think we talked about it at San Diego. I think that was where we talked about it.
So we announced it on the panel that like it started off years ago. I was talking to Ben Abernathy, and we were talking about the popularity of new characters and just ideas and stuff. And then I was like, "Oh, I've always loved Hush. I actually have Hush on my desk right now."
McFarlane figure?
The book.
Oh, okay, the book.
The book, not the toy. No, I have a Hush toy somewhere, but I have the book. And I was like, if we ever made the woman version of Hush, she should be called Shush. And Ben was like, that's really funny. We should do that though. That's interesting. And then it became very real. And then it was like, okay, joke's over. Let's take a step back and actually talk about this character and talk about their story, who they are, what they want, what their connection is, what their not connection is, and what is the actual story for them. Why have they chosen this name? And we really went into it, and we really had a lot of conversations about them as a character and the motivations in this book and how it connects to everything. And so, in issue 2, she plays like a major role too. Yeah, this. So in Batman and Robin 2. So issue 2, she's there. And she's part of the mystery, and then there'll be definitely, and it's on the cover of issue 2, so I'm not telling you anything that's like a spoiler, but it's like the cover of issue 2 says, who is Shush, and that is a part of the first year of the book. Like it is very much a like, who is this person, and we do start putting people on the table of like, it could be one of these people, and so you have to kind of like, as a detective, figure it out. And
are we going to have a fully photoshopped grid of all these different faces of characters?
Dude, I have written up this whole document that like goes into like the twists and turns of it, like this is the red herring, this is the obvious thing, but it's actually this. However, this happened, so it's actually this. Like, I wrote this whole thing up, but it's still gonna make sense at the end. But like, she plays a major part of this, and so with this first issue, I just wanted to put a lot of fun toys on the table, and the first 4 issues are basically like what I would call the pilot arc of like, this is what this book is about.
Yeah.
And then after that, it's like, again, more like fun adventures. And I wanted to put them through, like, I don't know, with Batman and Robin, I wanted same thing I did with Superman, where it was like I thought a lot about the animated series. And so
Hmm.
with this, I also think about the animated series, and I'm like, I just want Batman to do Batman things for a bit. It's like I want this to have all these pieces that I think make a fun Batman comic and something I would enjoy reading. So I'm like, okay, some of that is detective stuff. Like,
Yeah.
let them have a case to investigate. Let them save some lives, let them get into some trouble. Like, let's see Batman do Batman things for a little bit.
Yeah.
Let's see Damian do, Damian stuff, but also Robin stuff. So it's like I put all of that in here, and I think this first issue I was really trying to put as much of that energy as possible. And obviously, Damian having a car is like an homage to when Tim Drake got his car after Nightfall. Where it
The
was the red.
Redbird. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm aware. Like I love that. That's how I learned, because that's actually funny because that issue, Robin #1 dates Damian.
Yeah.
15.
He's 16.
15.
15, but that's right. He's 15, but he has a provisional license because his father is handicapped.
Ding, ding, ding. Yes. Yes. Nerd award.
Ooh, yeah. I mean, listen, I read that book.
Well, me too. Me
But I
too.
mean, you know why? Because I was like a preteen, so I just like them. Like, this is what
Yeah.
teenagers are like. I want to
Me
be like
too.
this.
Me too. Yeah. I was preteen, and it was in that window of me, like, because I think I was like 10 or 11, so it was in that window of just me being like it's in that heat of like I'm buying everything now. Even though 0 Hour is really when I started really getting into buying all this stuff.
Yep,
But
I bought 0 Hour, and I was like,
I know we talked about it.
I'm not going to
Yeah.
pretend to know what the hell's happening. Like they were, you're especially if you're an entry level character and like an event or a crisis is happening, like they're going to throw a lot of characters at you that you've never seen before. You're going to see like references to things that happened like 25 years earlier, especially because like, what is it? 0 Hour
Listen, I have written a crisis. I am very well aware.
you know what's up. I love that. I was reading a Wizard not too long ago, and I was reminded of 0 Hour because they were like 0 Hour. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like the approach to 0 Hour was, it's been 10 years since Crisis on Infinite Earths. Let's take a victory lap with this 0 Hour crisis. Like,
And
let's just celebrate 10 years for no reason.
Ish, right? Like it's like
Mhm.
because that 94, I guess Crisis is like 90 is 84.
86.
Yeah, it's in that little window. What
Yeah.
a weird. I love 0 Hour, so I mean I can't, like, I really loved it.
I just like how Extant looks. He's just cool looking.
Dude, Extant was cool. This is at a moment where I was still surprised when I was reading comics because I had no idea what was happening. Like, I didn't have previews, I didn't have covers. I knew what 0 Hour was mostly because of advertising, and Wizard,
Totally.
but it was like, and Wizard barely covered DC Comics, so it was like, and listen, I've been around Wizard employees who made that joke. I'm not being mean. Like,
No, listen.
they barely covered DC Comics.
Isn't it ironic that former Wizard associates would then go on to make their own DC Comics Wizard magazine for a little while?
Oh, I know. Yeah, they made. Dude, actually, I love that thing. I was like,
it was great. It was a cool idea.
I was like, we need this. Yeah, it is really funny. But yeah, like I was a big 0 Hour kid, and it's like there was something you were saying about that we got to have. Oh, I want to say about 0 Hour really quickly. So, Hawkman.
Yes,
I have always thought Hawkman was really cool, and I've always really interested in Hawkman. But my Hawkman frame of reference came from the collectible cards. So it was like I had one history of this is who Hawkman is, and I was like, cool. Then you read 0 Hour, and there's that part where he scatters out. I was like, what?
What?
And that's when I learned, and that was my first introduction to like, oh, this is a whole thing.
Yeah.
Like, dude, oh, this is actually incredibly muddy. You know what I mean?
3 copies of Hawk World.
Oh, really? Oh,
I still have never read it. Comes up.
Oh, dude, Hawk World is really good. Okay, I want to say
I've never read it, but I've always been like, this looks really dope. And as a kid, even seeing the covers, I'm like, this is dope. Still never sat down and read the damn thing.
Hawk World is great. Okay. Hawk World is great. And then God bless Robert Venditti for making a Hawkman book that is really good. Him and Brian Hitch. It's really good. And I think Fernando Parisian was on that after that. That is a really good book that made sense of all of them. Like, for Robert, who is not a DC continuity guy, to be like, I'm the one that's going to take this on and then make it a really good comic book. Good job, dude. Good job. Every time I see him, I'm like, yeah, man, that Hawkman book, good job. I'm really excited for him. He's doing that Sandman book that comes out. The Wesley Dodds book that comes out in when is this? It's October. I think it's
Yeah.
October.
What a good idea that was to bring back Wesley Dodd. I wonder who had that idea. I don't recall who
So
wrote
it's
Night
funny enough,
Terror.
I actually had the idea for that, and then I got a call, and they were like, "We are also doing Wesley Dodd stuff. Can we connect?" And I was like, "I will figure this out."
Yeah.
Because it was, it was different groups, and so
Mhm.
I was like, "Oh, I want to use Wesley Dodds and Night Terrors," and then they called me and like, "We also want to use Wesley Dodds in the new Golden Age stuff," and I was like,
Yeah.
"Cool, whatever you need,
That's
whatever you
great.
want me to do." Yeah,
I
whatever you
love
want me to
that
do.
moment. That was another like kind of crisis-esque moment in Night Terrors when Wesley Dodd's like, "Oh, it's Batman." And they're like, "You know him? Didn't you die like 60 years ago?" And he's like, "I mean, I
Well,
predate
I like what
crises."
happened to that line. He's like, "You're his ghost possessing Batman's body, and you're having like
Yeah.
this is the part that's weird for you, and I'm a zombie, and that's the thing you're questioning."
Yeah.
I had to think about that a lot because I'm like, they've met. Like, I had to like think about that. I'm like, well, Wesley Dawes didn't die until the JSA Secret Files that came out
Mhm.
right before JSA #1, right? So I was like doing the math in my head. I'm like, that was '99. Yeah, they had to have met. Like,
Yeah.
I was like, I'm gonna go dig in, and I found stuff, and I'm like, obviously there's time travel shenanigans, but it was like obviously they met each other. Like Wesley Dodds 100% knows who Batman is.
Right.
Dead Man, I always think that's funny where it's like Dennis went through this on Night Terrors where he was like, "Oh, Robot Man and Zatanna have actually never really they've been in the history of DC they've been in panel together one time."
Hmm.
And that's when he was like, "I'm going to dig into this and do this whole Robot Man and Zatanna thing." I think it's like this is a really bad example. It's like when Shawn Michaels and Kurt Angle realized they had never wrestled each other, and they were like, "We're going to say this WrestleMania," and they kind of danced around it.
Yeah.
And then I was at that WrestleMania. I saw it live. It was amazing.
That's cool.
And yeah, it was cool. That was a great WrestleMania. I have some thoughts on that for a whole other. You don't care about that kind of stuff, but it's like
I'm not a wrestling guy. I'm sorry.
no, you're not. It's all right. It's okay. I feel like some of the lingo, you're probably just like, whatever. I
No, I
understand the
mean, listen, I had the toys. I definitely had a Jake the Snake
yeah.
Roberts. I had my Hulk
Oh yeah,
Mania.
me
I
too.
had my yeah. Well, I liked him because he had a snake. Obviously, I'm a child.
Yeah, you're a little kid. You're like, this guy has a gimmick. I love it.
Dude, there was a dude who used to walk around like, okay, so like near my house, there's like this pond with like a playground, and like this dude used to come by and walk his boa constrictors, like where he would just have these boa constrictors, and they would like Jake the Snake Roberts. So I'm like, I have a frame of reference for what this guy's doing. This is not scary. This is cool. Definitely could have been a real nightmare scenario, but apparently he was cool. He lived with his mom, but
snake stuff. I'm gonna go a little weird segue here. Yeah, I love that stuff, and anytime they had stories with the snake and the bite would bite somebody. But you fast forward like, and it's funny how like the childlike. I don't want to call it childlike because we should never lose this. Where it's like,
yeah,
when someone is telling you a story and you're able to give yourself up to that story and you can believe it, and that goes both ways, right? It's like I should provide a story that you feel you want to believe in and go along with it.
Yep.
But then I just hope, it's like Grant and that whole quote about Superman flying. It's like that famous quote where he's just like, they don't think about it, they just
That's funny. I have a Grant quote like that, but it's the one where it's that Grant says, "Who cares who changes Batman's tires?" And I was like,
dude.
"Well, obviously it's Harold." But okay, Grant, I get you. I get what your intention.
Harold's dead.
He's been dead since Hush, right? Like they've never brought Harold back.
But no, they brought him back. They brought him back in something, and then I think he died again. But
Damn it!
I think he was back in Eternal, maybe like Batman Eternal. I can ask James. James is probably online.
I skipped Batman.
Did you also kill Harold?
Yeah, definitely ask because I want to know. The comments will let us know.
What's that?
I said the comments will let us know.
Comments will let us know. Comments will let us know. Yeah,
dude. I remember when Hush came out and Harold showed up, and people were like on the internet. People were like, "Who the hell's Harold?"
I don't think Harold had been seen since like Nightfall.
They
had like he got lost in the caves, and then we never saw him again until Hush.
Dog food, and he left.
Dude, yeah. Did I ever tell you the story about how when I was in college, I've been in college for like 3 weeks, and we're in the laundry room. It was like me and a bunch of guys, and we're like doing our laundry. It was like maybe 3 guys. We're in our laundry room, late at night. And this other guy who was like a hardcore Batman dude who read everything. Like he was definitely like he had probably read more than I had at that point. His frame of reference was longer than mine. Like I was like very much a post-crisis Batman reader, and he was like probably a few years further in or back,
more Neil Adams era, yeah.
Yeah. Oh no, for sure. Yes, 100%. So we're sitting there and we're talking, and we start talking about Batman, and No Man's Land was going on.
Oh,
So we're talking about No Man's Land, and so we walked in, and they're like, "What are you guys talking about?" And we're like, "Talking about Batman." And they were like, "What's happening at Batman?" And I was like, "Oh, No Man." And they're like, "I haven't read Batman since Nightfall." And I was like, "Oh, let me tell you what's happened since."
yeah,
And so at some point, it was like me and this dude, and I remember sitting on top of one of the dryers, and I just held court. People kept coming into the room, and then more people kept
yes.
coming in. And I told the history of Batman from Nightfall all the way until No Man's Land. And I just sat there and I told the whole thing. And I think the person that was with me, and he was like, "Oh, don't forget this." And I'm like, "Oh, yeah, this happened." And I did the whole thing.
Yeah.
I could not do that now. I could maybe do it. I think you and I have before where like we forgot about Catechism at one point. Like I can kind of remember the stuff now, but it's like I still remember, but it's like, man, what a wild time. And I think that's
Yeah.
where I have this theory about certain creators and why certain creators are wired the way they are.
Mm.
And I've had this talk with like Tom and with Scott and a few other James, a few others, where it's like, when you look at Tom, I told you the story before, right? Like Tom didn't read comics in the '90s. He stopped reading.
Yeah, I think that's come up, but that doesn't surprise me. I mean, the '90s was a good time to kind of drop off for a little
Well, he
while.
dropped off at what year did he drop off? He dropped off in like I just asked him about this.
Like Image?
Like, yeah, yeah, like basically I think he read the beginning of Image. So I would say 93, 94
Okay, okay.
till about 99, 2000.
That was a good it's funny, people like to malign the '90s being like, "Oh, it was all gimmick covers and trash,"
There
and
were
I'm
good
like,
comics in there. Yeah.
there were a lot of good books in there, like the
Dude,
Vertigo period
Hitman,
came, like,
Starman, yeah, all of Vertigo, all that Vertigo stuff was really
everything you
great.
like
It was
about Vertigo was happening then, like, all of the
yeah,
good Image stuff came out then, like,
yeah.
Alan
You're looking
Moore
at
was writing bo like, was writing Youngblood, and you're like, "Okay."
oh yeah, dude, Supreme and all that stuff. Like, I mean, there's a
Supreme.
lot of really great comics in there. But yeah, Thomas stopped. So I have this, and Tom is very much a,
Golden age.
Tom was reading a lot of Keith Giffen stuff, and if you look at Keith Giffen and then you look at Tom's work, you can see the
The
parallels. Like people
influence.
always compare him to Alan Moore, but you can see the parallels with Keith Giffen as well.
Totally.
And but there is a moment where you have a lot of creators and a lot of readers too, obviously, like you and like people who like are in our sphere of comics. But it's like you have a lot of creators that are creators now who came up at a time period where Batman was
Was Azrael.
well, no,
Oh,
but this not only was he Azrael, Batman was an event book for 10 years.
that's right.
Like think about that.
Every single story, Bruce Wayne Fugitive, No Man's Land, Cataclysm, Contagion, like, yes.
Yep. So think about that. You have a round of creators who came up as readers where that was the norm,
Yeah.
where it is nonstop events.
Yeah. I'll be honest
Right?
though, I do predate that a little bit because I would buy like not just back issues because I'm like when I think of Batman, I want to think of Norm Brayfogle, but I know I
Oh,
think of Jim Aparo
see,
because
I'm a Brayfogle. Yeah. So
I
you're
love
right.
Aparo. I love Brayfogle, but like Aparo drew more of the Batman books that I was reading when I was getting into Batman. And it was like, and those were two, like, oh, Maxie Zooks is at it again, two
Oh
stories,
yeah,
moving on. Like,
dude.
maybe Night
There,
of the Beast, but even then, like, that was kind of like a big deal. That was.
it was interesting. Like when Nightfall was hitting, it's funny to think that like because we don't realize it now, but when we think about post-crisis, like Batman and Superman weren't allowed to be around each other.
Yeah, it
Just so
was
they'd be like a
weird.
two-parter, and he'd be like, "Oh my god, this is a big deal."
Yep.
Like whoa, like those books were kept very separate. Like there
Yeah.
was a Superman books, and there was a lot happening over there,
Hmm.
and then there was the Batman books, and there was a lot happening over there, and then you had the rest of the universe kind of rotating
Yeah.
around those two
Well, don't
pieces.
forget that great two-part story. I think maybe two parts where they were like, "Well, Robin's selling well. Put Robin in the Superman book." So Tim Drake and Superman team up to fight Lucy Lane, who's become a vampire.
Oh, dude. But here's the thing about that. I love that it's like we're gonna do weird like random stuff, but I do think this is why there are some creators, and like I know I'm guilty of this too, where our brains don't know how to turn the event off.
Totally.
And I'm better about it now than I was before. I think Robin specifically helped break me
Yeah.
of it in a way because Robin was interesting because it was like when I was on Flash. Flash is a book that is tied to the DCU, right? Like
100%.
it is one of those books that is core DC, and I think it's part of why like myself, Mark, and Jeff, and and you know, Jeremy too. I see this with Jeremy too, where it's like you have these people who work on the Flash, and they do it for a bit, and then suddenly they're like very embedded with DC
Totally.
because the Flash does that to you, right? It's because it is very much with the multiverse stuff, with time travel, his relationship with characters, the legacy pieces. It is a very embedded, important book for DC. So when I was writing that book, I was like, every 6 issues is essentially an event. Like I was like, everything is a thing. Like I'm like, it's all building, it's getting bigger, and you know. And then when I was on Robin, I did have an attitude of like, I want to be left alone. And so I literally put Damian on an island. Like, but think about that. I was like, I'm separating. Not only am I separating him, I'm separating myself.
Yeah,
Like
totally.
I'm detaching from this for a year
Yeah.
essentially, and then we did Shadow Wars. Like think about that. The moment Damian left the island, we were back into an event. But you know, I mean, I try to. It's hard because of the nature, I think, of comics right now with events and stuff. But anyway, that all being said, with this book, with Batman and Robin, I definitely try to make it just much more about this and less about, you know, it's less about like these gigantic stories. I hope people will respond to that because I don't think every story has to be a gigantic story.
I think
Like,
that's how you make
stories-
fans.
What's that?
I think that's how you build fans. I think that like new fans, because it's not just approachability, because everybody's talking about like how do we make, because I'm the one who's always like saying we got to erode the barrier to entry, but the best way to do that, the best way that like you will see a lot of entrenched older like elder statesmen of the comic industry talk about like the good old days, the newsstand days of comics.
Yeah.
And on one element, I'm like, yeah, except like the industry exploded because of the specialty market, and the sales were never better than when the you know, when comic shops open. But there's something to be said for like the done in ones or the two parters.
Yeah, done in
And it was
one.
like,
I wish we
yeah,
had way more done in ones.
we
It's
can't
hard
do that.
because what happens is I've seen this sentiment from other creators, and again, and as you're pretty aware at this point, I'm so detached from a lot of stuff at this point, like
Yeah.
and good and bad. I think to it, like it's a blessing and a curse. But it always feels like when there's a done in one, people call it a filler issue, and you're like, well, which
Yeah,
is
they do.
sucks because you're like, which
Well,
is it?
and I think they only do that because they don't know, because they don't remember. You know, it's like,
Well, that's the thing. I think that the event thing,
yeah,
is
the event thing.
difficult. Again, I'm guilty of this. So it's like, you know, with this book, I'm trying to do the same with Superman. Superman is shorter arcs.
Yeah.
Shorter,
Well,
it's shorter stuff. It's shorter things. You know, like I had a 2-parter that was just about Jimmy Olsen, basically. You know, and it's
yeah,
like with this one, like we're gonna have you know, we're gonna have shorter arcs, and we're gonna have stories that are, you know, I want it's hard because sometimes you don't want to call them smaller challenges. Like, I think there's sometimes a sentiment like when you call things smaller challenges, like, well, it's not big, I don't care.
right.
But I don't think it's like true. I think there is an audience that wants that, and I hope people read this book, and I hope people like it because it's like we're putting a lot of heart into it. You know, like
Mhm.
Simone's uh, really having a lot of fun, putting a lot of thought into like every page, and I'm trying to really make it be the kind of Batman and Robin book I would want to buy off the stands. You know,
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's one of those things that it's so rare, and getting like tying this Batman and Robin book that's coming. And when does it come out?
it was also September. So
September.
it's just
So,
like a month and like 6 weeks from now. 6 weeks from
so
now.
final order cutoff is what, end of the month?
Well, no, it is this Sunday.
This Sunday. Okay.
Not this
So,
Sunday as in when we're talking, but this Sunday.
no, but when this episode airs. Yeah. Well, this Sunday you should definitely call your comic book store and say, hey, yo, reserve me Batman and Robin
right now. Like, get
right
this
now.
video over, call them up, pre-order.
Call them up, pre-order it, put it on your pull list.
Yeah, I think that, you know, I'm a big believer in this, and I've become more and more of this, that like you have to support the books that you like. You have to, if you like that book, regardless of whatever's happening, you have to buy it. Like you have to support it, otherwise it will go away.
Yeah, and it's frustrating because, like, you know, the audience like has a love-hate relationship. Like, they love these books and they want them to succeed, but they also hate the institution and they don't like the pre-order structure. And I'm like, well, well, Spartacus, they ain't gonna stop it. So either
thing, I wish there was a different version of it. I think about this a lot. Like I think about how, you know, I wish there was a better version of it that was better for readers, better for retailers, better for everybody. And I do think there will be something in the future, like, because everyone's thinking about this. It's not like just you and I talk about this. Like, I think everyone is kind of aware this needs to change. But yeah, so I hope that the pre-order stuff gets better. But you know, it is kind of the comic world we have right now, where the best to let your retailer know. Like, call your comic shop and talk to your comic book store about it and say, I want this book. That's really what they go off of. They go
Yeah.
off of what.
But you know what I'm liking about this? We're getting a
What's that?
Batman who smiles,
Oh, dude, yeah.
which is like even a Damian who smiles.
He
Like
frowns. He still frowns in this book. He
he's
has a
got
couple frowny
he's
moments.
gonna frown, but like we're seeing like a slightly well-adjusted Batman, and I'm like, I'm here for it because the last time that I've seen it was in a fantastic series called Batman Universe, where Batman
Oh,
was kind
yeah.
of like really it was very different. It was a very different book, especially set against everything else that was coming out. But I was
I
like,
love that book, dude. That
like
book is so good.
the
It's so
Darrington
good.
art on it is like next level. And
Brian just
Bendis
nailed it. Like,
got it. And I was
dude,
like,
I remember when
why
that
is
book
this not the
was
book?
before that book came out.
Yeah.
Before that book came out, they were really secretive about it for some reason. I don't remember
Well, it
why.
was the Walmart
So,
book, remember? It was the Walmart initiative.
well, the Walmart thing, yeah. So there was just stuff with it. But so somebody gave me, I can't remember if somebody actually gave me a printout of the first 3 chapters. Remember, they were only 10 pages each or 12 pages each.
Yes.
They gave me a printout of just the first 3 chapters. So I had them like, just
As
literally like
sheets of paper.
sheets of paper. And I remember reading it and being like, oh my God, this is crazy. This is so good. And I took it with me to the convention. And I felt like I had like the secrets of the universe or something like that. I remember Rosenberg came up to me, we were talking, and I was like, you want to see something cool? And I just put it in my bag and I was like, read this. Rosenberg is like, that's what I think it is. I'm like, yeah. He's like, all right. Like, we had like some kind of secret thing, and he was reading it like while I'm standing there at this convention, and he was like, this is really good. I'm like, I know. We got to show this to people. Like, this is
Yeah.
really good. Yeah, that was really great. With this, I do think about Batman as being a Batman who smiles, who smirks. I always think about superheroes. I actually think that superheroes like being superheroes.
Yeah.
So,
You
like,
don't put on
I
a
have this.
friggin' bat costume without thinking, I look pretty cool.
Yeah, there's a line where White Rabbit, Batman tells White Rabbit to do something. He's like, basically, like, it's this big action sequence later, right? And so he's
Yes.
like, he tells White Rabbit to like do something, and White Rabbit says, "This is later. This is spoilers," but like, basically, she says, "Are you crazy?" And someone else is there, and they're like, "He's Batman. Of course, he's crazy."
I like that a lot.
And so it's like, I have stuff with them where I think with this a lot with Barry. Captain Cole would accuse Barry of enjoying being the Flash, like it was a selfish thing. I had that in that book, and then with Superman, like, eventually, I want to show Superman. I haven't been enough time to do it yet in the book, but it's like that dude just enjoys flying sometimes.
Yeah.
Like, obviously has things to do, but it's like he does appreciate it, and he does, like, sometimes he flies and he smiles because he's just like, this is cool.
It's so cool.
Like, it's so cool. And I feel like with Batman too, where it's like Batman is just like fully invested in the idea of being Batman. He just really loves it, and he's like, I think there are moments where he just goes, yeah, this is cool. Like,
and you know what it reminds me of? Because there's a moment in this book where you just see Batman and Robin, and they're together, and they're in full costume, and they're smiling. And
there's a fist bump.
It's a fist bump, yeah, exactly.
And there's a fist bump.
Which Batman, I would never see Batman do, but I also buy it, and it's just this moment where, I would say I've never seen it before, but I'm totally full of crap because I know I've seen it before, and I think Jeff might have written it, where it was the
I'll find that.
It's
like Batman doing a fist bump with Damian, or
no, not the fist bump.
Okay.
Just being being like, this is peak Batman. I am being Batman with my son.
That's it. That's it though too. It's like, this is with my son. Like,
yeah,
I think that's a big piece of this, is that it's like they are happy together now. And especially, but this is part of the story, like, they know how to be Batman and Robin, and they don't necessarily know how to be father and son yet, because they spent a lot of time with Batman and Robin over the years, and all their resolution has been about Batman and Robin. The father and son stuff still has some places to go, but you could tell, they still, but at the end of the day, Damian is a teenager.
Yes.
Right. And Damian is dealing with teenage stuff. So it's like, there's still that dynamic a bit there, but,
totally.
I hesitate. There was a line in an upcoming issue. I cut it because there's a moment where they argue about something. It's just for a page. They argue about a solution to a problem. And I had it originally where Damian was going to say, either you trust me or you don't. And then Bruce was going to be like, of course I trust you. And then I realized, I'm like, we have covered this ground many times.
Sure.
He clearly trusts him.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I can cut all that and just make it much more about, like, they are two superheroes, and, they have a disagreement for a hot second, but then Damian is like, here's the plan. Bruce is like, go.
Got it.
Like, yeah, there is no question anymore.
Yeah, the trust is
because it's like
implicit in the acceptance. Like we get it. Yeah.
we get it, and that's part of it. Is like that's something with this book. It's like there are certain elements where I'm like, okay, yeah, they've gone through this, and I can't keep revisiting it. I have to move them forward. It's like
Yeah.
they do trust each other. That is no longer an issue. They
Yeah.
do trust each other. So let's just move forward with that in this book and just have them, have fist bumps and tell some jokes.
Totally. There's
There's still tension. Like there's still moments in this book that are going to be like, oh shit, there's a lot going on in this book.
Yeah.
But I definitely want there to still be some jokes every once in a while.
Absolutely. No, I think the fun of it, because like what differentiates this from the other Batman books, A, it's going to be 50% Robin. B, there's some joy to be had, and to really play it up, like not just the joy of being an elemental force that, transcends media and time, but also is like a man who has a son who puts a costume on and tries to do good. Like that's the joy. Like that's, maybe it's the Spider-Man me where I'm like, I just want every book to be that, where I'm like, here's this poor schlo who just wants to do good. And he puts his costume on, he goes out, and I'm like, yep, I'm in. But
yeah, I mean, you and I have talked about Spider-Man privately, and
yes.
it's like I'm very much of the school of thought that I had read from Tom Brevoort, where he had said this in the back of one of the Spider-Man hardcovers, where he was like, and this is a struggle sometimes too, but it's like Peter Parker wins, Spider-Man loses, right? That whole thing. But I do think the element of just like the actual lesson to that, to me, isn't the win losses, is that it is two lives, right? Like this is a person who has a personal life.
Yep.
Like he's not just Spider-Man. And I feel that way about Superman. He's not just Superman, he's also Clark Kent.
Yeah.
And that's how I feel about Batman. Like Batman is not only Batman. He is also Bruce Wayne. Just like Damian is not only Robin, he is also Damian.
Yeah.
And that's the stuff I put in here. That's why I said earlier, it's like I will always make sure that there is a scene with them not wearing their masks. Like just let them be them for a little bit. And then again, just make it that really fun kind of energy of like, yeah, at the end of the day, this is a dude who's hanging out with his son and they get to be superheroes together.
Exactly. That's really cool. Right? Like that objectively is, especially if you're like a parent, you're thinking like, I get to, it's like bring your son to work day, but like, it's cooler.
It's way cooler. Yeah. I mean, there's a scene in this where it's like Damian is talking to Deadman about this in the Night Terrors that came out this week, and he mentions it, and Deadman kind of says like, well, isn't that cool? Like you're the son of Batman. He's like, yeah, sometimes. Like there's plus and minuses, it's still a complicated relationship, but at the end of the day, it's still a very fun book. And it's like, again, because of the work that Chip's been doing, the stuff that Rom has been doing, like their books have such their own identities,
big time.
And it's like the stuff that Chip is building with Gotham War and Catwoman, like that stuff is really cool. Rom has this massive, like obviously this massive like opera plan that he's been doing, this very like in-depth plan that's beautiful. Like you can see he's really building out this thing. It actually made my job a lot easier because I was like, oh, because those books have such strong identities.
Like you've got it. You do.
I got what I can do. I'm not muddying the waters. We're not like, oh, it's too much like Detective. Oh, it's too much like what Chip's doing. It's like, nope, this is very much its own thing. And a year ago, me and Ben and Simone, I feel like I met Simone before once, but like the three of us went out and we had lunch together, and we just put everything on the table. I was like, what do you want to draw? It was really funny because I said to Simone, I'm like, what do you want to draw? And he was like, I really want to draw Arkham Asylum. And I'm like, we blew it up.
Well, we can't do that.
What else do you want to draw? What other villains do you want? And it was really funny. He's like, I want this villain. And I'm like, nope. What else do you want to do? And then we started talking, and I explained to him the whole thing, and I was like, here's what we're going to do. And I was like, here's how we're going to make it different, and here's the stuff we're going to do. And then we came up with stuff, and I was like, what about this kind of scene? What about this? And the three of us just jammed out a bunch of ideas, and we were like, just having fun with it, like looking at some of that, it's funny, like looking at some of that like Fast and the Furious energy, where it's like these really big action scenes, but it's also about family, which is like such an identity of that book. And now everyone's copying it, but I'm like, that's fine. But it's that actually, it's funny. Like a lot. I was watching the Twisted Metal show last week, and I didn't realize that's. I actually really like it. Like I haven't finished it yet. But
I saw a review that was like, "Oh my god, is this actually okay?" Like,
dude, you get like halfway in, and you're like, dude, they did it. Like they put at least where I'm at in the story, they put all the pieces on the table.
Yeah.
And then when they get all those pieces kind of together about halfway through, you're like, this is really good. Like all the pieces are here, the characters are good, the chemistry between them is really good. But and I loved Twisted Metal when I was a little kid.
Of course.
So I was like, sure, I'll watch this, and it's only a half hour each episode, and they're really like kind of done.
Yeah.
They're borderline done in ones. Like
nice.
It's without getting into spoilers, but it's like clearly they're on their way someplace, and each episode is like a stop on their way, and it's just good. But then I realized like everything I was writing had car chases in it. Like everything had a car chase in it. Everything I was writing, I was like, this is because of Twisted Metal, and that's fine. That's fine. Everyone's gonna think it's because of Mad Max Fury Road or something like that. I'm like, nah, man, it's because of with this, but that's not why there's a car in this. The car stuff came up again last year. I was like, you know what? Like, and part of it was because I was like, I've seen the Batmobile. I've seen that page turn of like, and now the Batmobile is here. It's
right.
like,
Here's my Batmobile, because that's been like a big thing lately, hasn't it? Because like, I want to say, and maybe you can corroborate this, but like in the '90s, Batmobile was an afterthought, and I want to say it was because like internally they were like, they're all going to think about the friggin' movie. Just draw anything you want. Who gives a crap? And it just looks like this like electric shaver. It just looks like a thing.
There was one that was made. I feel like it was Kelly Jones. Like Kelly Jones designed one that was really cool, and I mean, I'm a '89 person, so I'm
of course.
Like,
don't.
Dude, I have like
but
you can't tell in here right now, but I have like 4 of those in this office. Of the '89. There's like I have the animated series one over here, and I have literally 3 of the on this side over here. You can't tell. I have 3 of the '89s over here. Yeah. I had a poster of the '89, like the blueprint poster. That's awesome. I had that up on a wall. Like I was all about that car, so I always try to find places for it. But I recognize you can't do that.
Yeah. Did you hear?
Okay. What?
Oh, this is totally unrelated. So it's.
I was gonna say we do have the Batmobile in an issue, and I went to Ben and I was like, "Can I have whatever is the most recent design? Let's do it. Let's just keep it consistent across the books."
That's nice.
Like let's keep it consistent across the books, and so that's what's in the book. We'll make sure it's the same Batmobile they're driving in the books. But yeah.
Does he like? I assume that in these books now, since Wayne Manor's whatever. Not like I'm not thrilled about that, but whatever. But does he just go like, "Oh, I need this special Batmobile. I'll just push a button, and that Batmobile will go from the underground cave that like no one has access to, and it'll go meet me someplace."
I actually don't know. I don't know.
You know what I mean? Like where the hell do they like? Does he have to go back there every time?
I think they're limited to where it's like there's one Batmobile now.
All right,
I think that's part of it. There's one. And if that one breaks, it came up last year where it was like, if that Batmobile breaks, he can't just like.
I remember that was the James line. It was like,
yes,
breaks,
you have to change it. Yes, okay, I was in that meeting. Just James totally said that in a meeting. We were all like, yes.
Yeah, Lucius Fox says it at the end of Joker Wars. Like, if the Batmobile breaks, you're fixing it.
Yeah, no, that came up in a meeting. James literally was saying, he was like, they're basically, you can't just break a Batmobile now. Like that was part of the difference. You can't just blow one up and then be like, whatever, let's build another one.
Yeah.
I mean, those things are probably like millions of dollars.
Yeah,
or how much money they put into the movie ones.
20-page fold out of all of the Batmobiles. Like,
the Jim Lee one.
Yeah.
No, I know. Yeah,
okay.
But yeah, what were we gonna ask me is completely unrelated.
Apropos of your Batman has to have his mask off at least. Your Batman and Damian have to have their masks off at least once per issue in this series, which is a great mandate. Internally,
I have cheats for it. I have like total cheats for it. But yeah, go ahead.
That's great. But it reminded me of. Did you ever hear this story? It's about the Batman animated series. Apparently, it was an internal rule for the longest time that Batman does not take his cowl off in the cave until Ra's al Ghul shows up.
No, I have never heard this
and
before.
That
makes sense. Now I'm like, really though? I mean,
that's what I said. But I was watching this thing. There was this podcast with like one of the showrunners, and they were like, we had a rule that was like, you don't see Bruce Wayne in the Batcave. Like you can either see Bruce Wayne or Batman, but it's not Batman with the mask off in the Batcave. He's Batman in the Batcave the whole time because he has these 2 separate like lives. But when Ra's shows up and connects them, that's when you see, and it's this moment where he's got his cowl down and he's reading something, and then Ra's appears in the cave, and it's like, and I'm like, if they did that, that's amazing.
No, for sure. Yeah, that's like genius level stuff. And I love stuff like that where you're like, again, and I think it's a lot with comics in general, where I'm like, I want them to be thoughtful.
Yeah.
Like I appreciate when you can tell they're thoughtful and they actually put that kind of effort into the story, where they're like, no, we're gonna have it be, like that. Like somebody had a thing where like, we're not gonna do this until this happened. On Flash, I had a rule on Flash that the last page would never be Barry running toward the reader.
Because that's such a cliche.
It would never do it. I would never do it until my very last issue. And that's what I did. I held on to it until then. Like,
that's so
I
cool.
had sheets for that too, where it was like, even when we did year 1, we had a big 2-page spread of like the whole Flash family running, and then I had like a 3-page epilogue.
Yeah.
Like, I always made sure that that was not technically the last page of every issue until 2 things. I had my last issue of the Flash had Barry running at the reader, but Speed Metal came out this exact same day.
Yeah.
And that has Wally running at the reader. And that was, which I have the original art for. It's over here.
Oh, cool.
Because that is to me the last page, because a big part of me leaving Flash was like, okay, now Wally's taking over. Like, we're building this so that Wally can be Flash again. So I was like, to me, that was Barry's story. And the last page is now Wally is running. So I got to have it be where the day that I left the Flash book, there are 2 issues out. One last page is Barry running. One last page is Wally running. I was like, I did it. I'm out.
That's so cool. That's great.
There was a moment where they asked me to come back on Flash, and I said no. This is like way later, and I was like, not way later. It was, I'm not sure how much later it was. I think they were like, are you sure you don't want to like stay or whatever? And I was like, no, I did it.
Yeah, he ran with the reader.
Yeah, I'm out. Can't do it again. Can't do it again. But with this book, I mean, I have a lot of plans for this one. I'm again, it's like we talked before. Like, I have no idea. I'm in this really weird spot. You know, I talked before where it's like I'm very disconnected from stuff at this point, and it's like I'm really just trying to make the best books possible. But I always feel like I'm still learning. You know, like I'm very much like Damian, where I'm like I'm still figuring this stuff out. I'm still learning. You know, and I'm still trying to figure out how to be like, you know, the kind of writer I want to be. You know, and so with books like this, all I'm trying to do is just be like, you know, I hope people enjoy it. Like, I hope they see that we're trying to put out the kind of books that we like out there, and feel like it's funny. Every time I put out a new book, I always feel like I learned something from it, and I'm always like, okay, you know, it's like, okay, how do I improve upon this? You know, like I feel the same way that Damian and what Bruce is saying to Damian at one point in the book of like, you know, you can't think you know everything, and you can't suddenly have this moment where you're like, I'm done learning. Like, I don't think I'll ever be that kind of creator anyway. Like, I always feel like I'm trying to figure things out, and like, and that's even with this book where it's like I don't have it all figured out. I'm still trying to piece this together of like, what kind of writer do I want to be in comics, and what is my like, you know, I don't know how to put this, but it's like just I feel like I'm still learning. And it's like with this book, I hope people see that like we're putting a lot of emotion into it, we're putting a lot of heart into it, and we're just, you know, we're having a lot of fun with it. We're just making the kind of comic that we want, you know. I will say this one thing about Simone. I'm not sure if you know this. Do you believe that Simone's pages? You might already know this. Do you think they're digital or are they ink?
Oh, I mean, I thought they were. I definitely thought they were digital. Just looking at them, I'm like, this is. I mean, definitely digital. You know, effects like
digital colored. You've seen it, right? They're inked.
I have never. I didn't know that. No.
He talked about this on. If you go to his Instagram, you can see it. I think what he does is he does blue line, digital.
Okay.
And then he actually physically inks it.
Oh my god.
He inks it. I think he does finishes. He does the whole like the actual like drawing part is ink.
Yeah.
And then he goes back in. He scans it back in, and he then does like the touch ups and the colors.
Wow.
If you go to his Instagram, there is, I think it's the cover or it's the 2-page spread from the beginning of this issue. He has those on there, and you can see it. Now click over with the thing. Yeah. The button. Keep going. Look at that.
Oh my god.
Dude, isn't that crazy? Like,
I had no idea.
Beautiful. I know, right? Like, you see that and you're like, what?
What?
What? Dude, that's how I felt when he told me. I was like,
no.
Yeah, I literally was like, no way. This is all digital. But then you see this, and it's like, oh, this dude's a genius. Like, this dude is super talented. I'm very lucky to be working with him. Like, he's very thoughtful. He puts a lot of thoughts into stuff. It's funny. At one point, he wrote an email. Like, early on, he'll write these emails, and he has a lot of questions. Like, he really is putting thought into it. And I'm like, So, you know, it's funny with some artists, I give them the script and I always say, if you have questions or thoughts or anything you want to do to improve upon the story or our storytelling, please let me know. I'm always very like, I'm always here. Some artists will reach out. Some I will never hear from. And then some I will get like, I have a lot of questions. And it's always great. They're like literally thinking about it. They're like, oh, what about this? About this? Like Jamal is like that. Jamal will be like, what is the material this is made out of? Like, and I don't mean that in a bad way. He'll be like, when we were talking about the kryptonite glove,
Yeah.
the kryptonite claw, he was like, what is that made out of? And I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, let's talk about this. We were like, well, it can't be this. It can be this, and he's very thoughtful about those things. And,
That's
it's,
cool.
yeah. And Simone is very similar where it's like there's a lot of thought into the work he's doing. And yeah, man, this book, I really had a lot of fun doing this one.
It's a sick looking book. I mean, and it's really fun, and it's got a lot of heart, and it really like, I think it's hitting on something that we're lacking, and it's not no shade to any of the current Batman creators, but just like we're not doing that right now. Like,
well, as again, like I said, it's like I really love what Chip and Rom are doing. That's what I was like, okay, because their books have such clear identities.
Yes,
and they're telling the stories they want to tell. My job is to tell a different story that doesn't contradict their stories.
Exactly,
and that really came around to tone. It was like, and that's why we have, we mention stuff that's happening, and we show visuals that connect the tissue together. Like we make sure it's still taking place in the same universe, but and still part of that story. But I wanted to make sure we hit this tone that we were going for, and it's like, yeah, the next few issues, like it just gets crazier and crazier. Like I'm very excited for people to see. Like, I feel like we have some really nutty stuff that I think will surprise people. But at the end of the day, it's a story about a father and son who just happen to be superheroes, and they get to hang out and jump off of gargoyles in the middle of the night. It's very fun.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to more, man. Folks, if you want it, you should pre-order it because it'll keep the book going.
Yeah.
And you've got mini arcs. You got like shorter stories. You've got a 4-issue kind of like pitch or
opening arc. I don't want to have it be, but it's all. Yeah, with Superman, I always make sure that it's like I have all these like subplots that are building, but I make sure that I have shorter A plots. When those A plots will then inform stuff later, and that's how this one is too, where it's just like it's that. But yeah, it's really fun. And I hope when people watch this, they get excited about it, and then they pre-order it.
I think so. I know I will. But thanks a lot for watching, everybody. Thank you, Josh, for being here again. And we'll see you guys next month. Next month, any teases for next month for people to check out the show? Month. I know.
I thankfully have no new comics coming out the rest of the year that I.
Oh no, you're not launching another effing series.
No, I think this is it for me. I think this is my last launching of a series. So yeah, we'll be able to just talk about what's going on in Superman and what's going on in Green Arrow,
Batman and Robin.
I do have the G.I. Joe stuff launching at the end of the year, so we'll probably talk about that.
Oh, definitely. Oh yeah.
Yeah, we'll get into a whole G.I. Joe conversation. But anyway, thank you everybody